But Des, let's start with the Colorado game and Deion Sanders' team. What is the recipe for them to pull off what would be an enormous upset at Oregon tomorrow?
Well, you know, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, we were looking at a TCU team that was highly ranked, and they were about to host Colorado. And Colorado was probably like a 3-touchdown underdog. So how was they going to pull off this huge upset on the road? Well, first and foremost, they got off to a fast start. They took the crowd out of the game. It was like a shootout. It was like, you know, fast offense against fast offense. So that's the key first for Colorado. Austin Stadium, that's a quaint, loud, very loud stadium that they play in Oregon. So they want to take the crowd out the game. Make sure they eliminate turnovers. You don't want to turn the ball over on the road. I tell you what, as a fan, though, I just feel so cheated that we're not going to see Travis Hunter, the two-way superstar for Colorado in this game. So I think defensively, they're going to have to play like a lot of zones, a shell coverage, and keep Oregon's offense in front of them. So I think getting off to a fast start, no turnovers, and then great defense, keeping everything in front of them is a recipe for success for Colorado.
Yeah, I failed to mention, but Hunter out for this game and several others, probably with that bad injury we all saw on Saturday night. Heather, how would you describe their chances? Again, they're 3-touchdown underdogs. They're playing without one of their best players. The whole world, it feels like the entire world is pulling for them to keep this story going. How do they do it?
Well, Greeny, I spoke to a coach who played against Oregon this season to get a scouting report on the Ducks, and his quote to me was, Shedeur Sanders is going to have to play his best damn game in order for them to have a chance. He also told me that Colorado's defense has to get Bo Nix off of his mark and know where his top wide receiver, Troy Franklin, is on every third down. And the final point that he made to me was that they've got to attack Oregon's secondary because that's their weakness, but the Ducks can make up for it with their ability to stop the run and get after the quarterback.
All right, I want to get to the Saturday night game in South Bend, which is where, again, Des is, and Heather, you'll be there as well. You know the college football playoff selection process better than literally anyone. Which team needs this game tomorrow night more for their chances?
Greeny, I'm going with Notre Dame because obviously they don't have a conference championship game to play in. And so the bar in the selection committee meeting room is higher for independents and any team that doesn't win its conference title. That means everybody in the room has to think Notre Dame is unequivocally one of the 4 best teams in the country, even if they lose to Ohio State. Now, that means they have to run the table. Marcus Freeman knows that. This schedule is tailor-made to impress the selection committee. But they've got really one margin for error. That's one loss. So if they lose this game, the pressure's on.
Des, what's the most important factor in this game tomorrow night?
I think the most important factor in this game tomorrow night is to be able to establish the run and stop the run. I was at Notre Dame's practice yesterday. I spoke to several coaches, and despite the fact that Marvin Harrison Jr. is an exceptional talent at the wide receiver position, he's never taken over a big game. He's never been the focal point of their offense. He's like an added bonus, but he's not like the big piece. The big piece is the running game, Trevion Henderson, and they have like a stable of running backs. And if you know anything about Ryan Day, especially on the road, he's going to want to establish the run. So the X factor is if at the line of scrimmage, in the trenches, if Notre Dame can hold up defensively, their front 7 against Ohio State's offensive line, and if they can stop the run.
And then very quickly, I only have 60 seconds, but I want to get both of you on this game. It feels like an enormously important day for Nick Saban tomorrow at home against Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. Des, how do you see the game? Super quick.
It's a carousel of quarterbacks for Nick Saban. We've heard him talk about the quarterbacks, never heard him sound so depressed about a quarterback situation in my life. I think this game is huge for them, and I think they should be on upset alert at home.
Heather, what do you think?
I'm going with Ole Miss in this game. They got bigger problems at Alabama than their quarterback. Their offensive line has allowed more sacks than any other team in the Power 5 conference. And Jackson Dart is throwing big-time plays, over 20 yards. And guess what the Texas defense did? Alabama's defense did against Texas. They allowed 6 plays over 20 yards.
That's Greg McElroy, and he's ready to talk about the huge games on the schedule in college football this weekend. And let's start with your alma mater and play a game of What If. Hey, Greg. Greg, what if, at home, Bama loses this weekend to Ole Miss?
Well, Grady, I mean, the national championship hopes, and we know at Alabama, everything rides on championship. Hey, great season. Less than that, failure. The championships are essentially extinguished. But I would say this, the SEC West is wide open, man. I mean, LSU's looked human. Ole Miss has looked human. Mississippi State looks very average. A&M looks human. They might still get to the SEC championship, even if they lose this week. But let's think about it. I mean,
we'll see.
Next. Yeah.
Let me go to the next game.
Yeah.
Notre Dame, Ohio State. I feel like I fear we're losing Greg's feed a little bit here. What happens if Notre Dame wins tomorrow night at home against Ohio State?
I think it's arguably the biggest win in 30 years. The last time they had an opportunity like this was in 1993, playing against #1 Florida State. They got that win, and they ultimately won the national championship. They pull this off, it would rival the excitement in the early 90s.
Absolutely. Monster game there. And then finally, of course, Colorado, a 3-touchdown underdog at Oregon. What if Coach Prime and his team pulls another one off?
Greeny had buttoned up arguably the most shocking month in the history of football, NFL and college. First of all, how often do you win outright as a 21-point dog? To do it twice, when you take into account there's 86 new players on the roster, it would totally shake up the college football world unlike anything we've ever seen.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about them here. How do they do it? I had Desmond on earlier, and we were talking about it. For the fans who are getting set to watch this game and are looking for the things to pick up as it gets going, what is the blueprint for Colorado to pull off this huge upset?
Well, they have incredible weapons. And the game in college, as much as ever before, is played in space. It's played horizontally. It's played vertically. Well, the good news is they can match up in those areas. They have incredible talent. Even in spite of losing Travis Hunter, they still have a top-tier, top-5 wide receiver core in the country. And Shedeur Sanders got to manufacture those big plays, because to just dink and dunk your way down the field against Oregon is just an unlikely recipe for success. But what I would say is they have not given Shedeur Sanders a lot of time. He's pressured on 44% of his dropbacks. He's been sacked 15 times this year, including 11 in the first 2 weeks against real top-level competition. Now you ramp it up a whole nother level when you're playing against an Oregon team that can ground and pound. So they got to protect Shedeur Sanders, and they got to give him time to find those incredible wide receivers downfield in one-on-one passing situations.
And let's talk about him for a moment. This is a name people may have known, but not a player that people knew real well before this season began. Now we're hearing all of this talk about him being a top-5 NFL draft pick whenever he decides it's time. What is your evaluation of Shedeur Sanders as an NFL prospect?
Well, Greeny, I went into it the same way I think everybody else did. Like, wait and see, right? I mean, is he for real? I hope. I mean, he was a highly regarded high school prospect, so you knew he had the blueprint for ultimate success. He has far surpassed anything I anticipated. Going from kind of, and maybe an unknown, like we'll evaluate him as a prospect down the road. Now, he's not quite where Caleb Williams and Drake May are. They are by far and away the top 2 prospects in the upcoming draft at the quarterback spot. The guy that I have at number 3 is at Washington. It's Michael Penix. But at worst right now, Shedeur Sanders is number 4, which means probably in what's likely to be a quarterback-needy draft, he's probably coming off middle of the first round, maybe even the top 10, depending on when that run of quarterbacks probably starts. So he could surpass Penix, too, if he continues on the ascent that he's been on in the first 3 weeks of the season.
And then quickly, let me get another take on Bama from you. That's your program. You were there sort of in the early stages of the dominance. What would you say is hanging in the balance for them tomorrow home against Ole Miss?
Well, I think perception is a big one. And obviously, Bama forever. Most of the time, Greeny, when people stepped on the field, they were beat before they even kicked it off, because Bama had an intimidation factor over pretty much everybody that they played. Well, that intimidation factor is right now kind of in the balance. Now, they still have excellent players, but the margin for error is significantly smaller than it's been in the past, partly because maybe Bama's not as deep as they once were because of the portal era, but also because so many other teams, those teams that were way behind, have now caught up. So I think it will have a pretty big impact on just how Bama's perceived moving forward. I still think they can beat everyone on their schedule, but they have to play their A game to do it. Whereas back in the day, Greeny, they could play their B-, C+ game and still win comfortably against pretty much everyone they play.
Give me something.